What would you do if 250 million people in your country were illiterate? What would you do if 600 million people in your country were at least 3 levels below reading level by age 10? How many of these readers could you yourself tutor? If that's your incredibly generous and philanthropic solution, my first reaction was just go and make them read. This is an incredible episode we have for you today. There's a team in India who found a solution that's easier than tutoring, more far-reaching, and frankly, more logical. They have found a way, if you can believe it, to take what children love to do anyway and raise their reading levels while they're doing it. You're going to hear what they did, what they're doing, and how it's now becoming a national policy, so that even after the organization is just a memory, the dynamic of children learning while they do what they enjoy will remain as long as television and mobile phones still exist. There's our first clue as to what they're doing. Get ready to find out how this incredible group is reaching children in even the most isolated parts of the country, and soon in even the most isolated parts of the world, to strengthen literacy and, in doing so, strengthen financial stability and gender equality. You're going to be gasping for a breath just from the scope of their initiative. And you're going to hear it from one of their key figures of Billion Reader Initiative, the inspirational Surabhi Yadav. Just starting out in the professional world like a rocket with initiatives falling out of her sleeves. And that's changing the lives of people and especially girls and women all over the world. So are we ready? Surabhi, welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I am so excited to have you here, and I just really appreciate the time you've given us to tell us about the Billion Readers Initiative. One of my main goals in having you here is to encourage people who are listening, who know about what you and your team is doing, to perhaps implement something similar in their own areas. So let's begin with the most important part. Could you explain to me where you are in this incredibly idyllic setting I see behind you?
I'm based in a village called Kanbadi in Himachal Pradesh. It's on the top of India in that sense, a northern state. It's a hilly state, as you can see. I have a lot of beautiful hills in the background.
All right, and let's talk about your education, because it's quite an education. You haven't just settled for the 12 years of public schools offered by the Indian government. You found those portals in the educational world to give you access to many opportunities, haven't you? Could you tell us where you're from and what your educational journey has been so far?
Oh, I'm from everywhere, I feel now. I grew up in, a semi or peri-urban area, a district or town in Madhya Pradesh, central India. And my roots are in a village in Bundelkhand. So growing up, these were the two places. I would be in Khargon during school time, during summers, I would be in my village. Like that's it. Like those two worlds were the exposure. But then after 12th standard, I went to Delhi and I went to Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. I did my engineering degree. It's one of the sort of best called engineering colleges in the country. And then from there on, like the life has taken its own turn. I've studied biochemical engineering and biotechnology, bachelor's and master's. And then I studied master's in development practice, which is sort of a small MBA in social sector from University of California, Berkeley. And now I'm here.
So I read about the $1 billion readers in India and was incredulous. First of all, I could not believe what an ambitious project is. And second of all, I couldn't believe that no one else had thought of it before, or at least hasn't implemented it, especially on the national level your team is doing, because it's so logical. And the idea is so simple, even though what we're going to hear and what you've sort of indicated before is that the implementation is a bit more involved. So I posed some questions in the introduction leading up to this moment, Surabhi. What can we do in the face of a national pandemic, we could say, of illiteracy? Your team seems to have found the solution. Can you tell us what the BIRD program is?
Yeah, I love how you, in the beginning, maybe slip of tongue, but you called it $1 billion reader. And I think it is a $1 billion idea. It is that. It is exactly that. So Billion Readers is an initiative that is promoting mass literacy through entertainment content using a very, very simple and innovative tool called same language subtitling. It is exactly what you hear, same language subtitling. So any TV program that you're watching or any entertainment content that you're watching on screen, whatever you're hearing you can read as well. And it is an Indian initiative. Currently, we're working hard to implement this across India. What we're hoping is that as an average Indian watch TV in their household, as they're watching their favorite serial, their favorite movie, they're also getting an effortless reading practice just by reading the same language subtitles on it. So yeah, that's billion readers, a lifelong effortless reading practice for billion people in India.
How long have you been doing this initiative?
So I co-lead this, but I got associated only, like it's been only 2 years. But this initiative has been founded back in 1996. It started as a research project by Dr. Brij Kothari, and in 2004 he started his own nonprofit called Planet Read. So there's extensive research that him and his team has done in like 2 decades, proving its efficacy. And now it is actually a public policy. It's part of a public policy. So yeah, the project is much, much older than I am.
It's much older than you are involved in the project, right?
Yeah, my involvement in the project. Yes, I'm 32. The project is not 32.
No, you're very young. You're very young and so accomplished already. So, Surabhi, can you explain to me, you did explain to me when we talked earlier, I had thought that radio was the most expansive source of media in India. And you told me that no, in fact, it's television, which is why the subtitles work. Can you just give us a little bit of basis on that?
Yeah, actually, more than comparing it to radio, I would like to compare it to phones, because current understanding is that, there's an increase in smartphone penetration in India, which is true. And because we see phones all around us, the assumption is that, nobody watches TV anymore, or, access to TV is reducing and access to phones is, ubiquitous. And to that, I want to challenge that actually TV might be the most commonly used ICT, especially if you're looking at underserved communities. Within that, if you're looking at girls and women, because even if there are smartphones that have reached, let's say, remote area in Uttar Pradesh or Bihar, even if there is a smartphone in the house, the next question follows up, okay, does the internet gets recharged every month? Do women and girls in the household have access to that phone? And we saw that during COVID, when there were a lot of edtech initiatives and a lot of government push for online content. And we saw that in so many ground reports that even when there was a smartphone present in, let's say, a low-income household, girls had to fight for it. And there were testimonies around like, the brother wanted to play a game on the phone while there was a class that was being conducted for the girl child. So there's this tussle, right? Like, who owns the phone? Is there enough resources to recharge the phone? And if at all, who gets to use it for leisure? Who gets to use it for entertainment consumption? TV, on the other hand, there are 200 million TV households in India. On an average, Indians watch 4 hours of TV every day. And there are reports backing this. And in the evening, TV is not just like most common ICT, but just think in terms of leisure time. In evenings, a lot of households, urban and rural areas, families watching TV together while having dinner is a very, very common sight. So 6 people glued to a screen is a very common sight, at least for an hour or two. And to me, that is a rich, rich area of intervention, especially for literacy. Yeah.
So this brings up the element of gender, and I know that this is a passion of yours because the different cultural implications of gender in the use of ICT are important. And I'm just wondering, if we understand why gender is a factor in watching television, then could we understand a little bit better why the Bird Initiative is having such a strong impact on strengthening, in particular, women's literacy, especially since, from what I read, is 60% of all the weak readers are women.
In fact, because the moment you think about culture and different contexts, leisure activities, that they become very limiting for women, like what leisure activities are allowed. For example, you won't see girls after, let's say, 15 or 16 years of age playing outside homes, right? So right there, like public spaces are already limited in terms of leisure. So a lot of time is spent inside the home. I often say this to people that in India, most living rooms don't have books beyond school textbooks. So where exactly are you getting your reading practice after school? But there are certain leisure activities which are sort of socially sanctioned and approved. And watching TV with your family is a big one. In fact, if you ask a woman, just especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities or remote areas, if you ask women about TV consumption habits, just in the beginning of conversations, they would just say, no, we don't watch TV. Because again, idleness or leisure, women have to justify that. because there is a direct commentary on the character that you're a lazy person if you're sitting idle. Men don't have that, right? But watching TV with your family in the evenings, a fully approved, socially approved leisure activity and happens all the time.
So from what you're saying, this whole initiative came to be as a way of taking advantage of the acceptance of women watching television or people watching television, but it's also based on using same language subtitles as opposed to a translation of whatever you're watching, the movie or the song or the television series, because subtitles usually has to do with paraphrasing a narration, even if it is in the same language. And your program is literally word for word and in the same language as whatever you're watching, right?
So, Donna, I'm going to interrupt you a little bit on this because I want to make 2 pointers on just what you said. One, I do want to talk a bit about the inception of same language subtitling, or SLS. It actually didn't start from noticing what women and girls are doing. It actually began from Bridges' own experience as a research student back then, as a PhD student back in 1996, when he was watching a Spanish movie with English subtitles. And he sort of quipped that, oh, it would have been lovely if the subtitles were in Spanish, because, him and his friends were trying to learn the language. And that's why they were watching the movie. And then he further joked that, if all the Bollywood movies would have same language subtitling, in India would become more literate. Because in India right now, there's 600 weak readers, which is to say almost 50 to 60% of school-going or educated people cannot read well. So literacy is a big problem, like weak literacy, weak problem.
Okay, but just let's pause there 1 second, because you're taking for granted that our listeners understand the magnitude of Bollywood movies, and probably a lot of them do, but it's a huge part of your campaign. And one of the reasons why SLS works is because so many people in India watch Bollywood movies. I mean, how many do they watch weekly?
Oh boy, I actually don't have that. But what I do know, it's one of the biggest entertainment industries in the world. We produce 1,500 movies on average annually in 20 different languages. And Bollywood is just like Hindi movies. So there is Marathi movies, there are Kannada movies, Tamil movies, Malayalam movies. But Bollywood itself produces 1,500 movies.
A year. Okay.
A year. I want to say that. I might be wrong on this, but yeah, those are the numbers that are coming to my mind. But it's big.
Sounds good.
We really enjoy our films. That's what I would say. It's a rich source of entertainment. There's drama, there's songs.
It's a big escapism. It's great escapism. I love the movies.
And it also brings communities together, honestly. I think people really love to see the stories played out. But yeah, it's huge. It's really huge. But the other thing that you mentioned about just the initiative, what you were talking about, differentiating it from captioning or differentiating it from translation, it's, as you said, word by word. You read what you hear. And let me give you a small statistic on that. One Hindi movie can have, on an average, 14,000 words. So if someone is watching 1.5 hour of movie, they would be exposed to 14,000 words. And if they are able to retain even 1/10 of that, and if this is happening on a regular basis, they're already making a significant jump in their vocabulary, in their language learning, in their reading ability, and of course, media accessibility as well.
All right, and that's in just one movie. So the research is based on eye tracking and saccadic eye movement, right? What about the colors? I've read that the SLS is in different colors and that improves the viewer's experience. Could you explain that?
So that depends on different standardization. And I think the team is still finalizing the SLS standardization. Earlier that they had used different colors in SLS, but it's not how our team does it now. But different colors definitely helps younger readers follow the letter by letter, right? But I do want to mention that when SLS comes on screen, your brain is doing the work without even telling you, right? Like even if you try to avoid the words on the screen, you would really struggle for it.
No, that's really true, because if I'm watching a movie or a series in English with English subtitles, as much as I may try, I still end up reading the subtitles. So just out of curiosity, which does the Bird team focus on more, movies or songs? Because I thought I read that songs are even more popular amongst the population than television.
So yeah, earlier the one of the biggest pilot that the initiative did was there was this songs program called Rangoli on national television on a channel called Doordarshan. It's a government channel, and this program was run. It would be an hour long, and songs would be played back to back. On that, when you have same language subtitling and the words are sort of the colors are jumping from one word to another, it becomes like a good karaoke. So it really helps a weak reader follow the words. But even if the color was not there, they would still be getting their reading practice. Yeah.
So let's just go into the age group, because you're focused on adults also, but you're focused on children. And one of the things I read in the research was that you're trying to catch children before they get to the age of 10. And from my research, I thought that the foundational structure is pretty much cemented in all of our minds by the age of 7, or, if we're going to be really exact, 6 years and 4 months. So why did I see the year 10 in some of the articles for SLS?
Even younger, actually, not just age 10, especially in the context of India. In India, there are many, many dialects of languages, right? And a child is learning their home language first. And then in school, a lot of times they're learning a different language. So it's the immersion to different languages that you're getting, right? And according to the neuroscience, your word formation, your vocabulary building, your grip on how the tonality of the language, all of that gets formed very early in your childhood. And if you miss that early childhood window, it becomes significantly harder for the child to pick up a language. The point is not about, put kids in school early on, but immerse kids in the language that they want to learn early on. So yeah. So for that reason, we think this initiative can be, especially this is happening in homes, in their own comfort areas. And the best thing about entertainment content is people have a choice of their preferences. They watch what they like, unlike textbooks, right? So you're not pushed towards reading something. No. There's no pushing, actually. There's a pull that already is there. Children already are sitting in front of TV. So, at Bird or Billion Readers, we often say that we're not promoting that kids should be sitting in front of TV and watching more TV. They're already doing it. So we are not here to make education content entertaining. We're making entertainment educational. So they're already watching it. We're just inserting a tiny bit of SLS in it.
So can we just go back 1 second more? Because you were talking about songs before. Why in your research does it suggest that songs are a more effective way for girls to learn as opposed to boys when we're talking about the SLS?
I think one is just the memorization of the songs. And two, I'm throwing in a cultural bit here, and I might be wrong in it because I don't have a research claim to it. But I also feel culturally, women tend to enjoy dancing with songs a lot more easily than boys are encouraged to do that. So you're actually immersing in the experience of singing, dancing, and reading. And I'm going to quote one of the articles that Bridge had written about, neurons that fire together, wire together. So you are reading, you are listening, you are moving. All of that strengthens your association with what you've just learned. So that's my basis for why it really works. I do think that it works for everyone, but especially whoever is actually immersed and tuned and hooked in that tune is going to learn a lot faster.
And why is it, Surabhi? Why is it? Because I've heard this and I've read about it in so many different initiatives that when girls are more literate, when women are more literate, that there's more financial stability. When you have more stability in a home, you have more stability in a whole country. But why is it that when women are more literate, it really expands like that?
Again, it goes back to the social context in which we are raised. The expectations and the sense of responsibilities with which boys and girls are raised in India is, in many contexts, is slightly different than each other. For example, boys get granted a lot more carefreeness and a lot more, I would say, chances to make mistakes. While girls, because there are a lot more social rules of what should be done, what should not be done, they're given less chances of failure. I don't support someone carrying the burden of not failing, but what it ends up doing is it ends up making girls more tuned to be more responsible right early on from their upbringing, right? Second, just by the practice, young girls get involved in household chores much, much, much early on than boys do. the narrative that is given to a lot of girls is like, oh, you have to become capable in the household work, in the relationship building work, in the caregiving work, so that once you have your own family, once you're married, you're capable to do that there. So young girls are getting more practice for caregiving, young girls are getting more practice for community building than boys are getting the practice. Not that they're not capable of that. Of course, they're capable of that. Because of these two big factors, when women actually get the money in their hand, when there is genuine power in your economic power in your hand, it gets distributed for the well-being of your community and your family, unlike boys. And if you see, like, the bigger statistics that come to my mind for this is in the agricultural workforce, 81% of agricultural workforce is women. But the ownership of assets, of farmland, or the produce and everything is less than 10% for women. So if what you're seeing is that it's women who are doing more hard work. They are the ones who are running the home economy. They are the ones who are running farm economy. Now we're just waiting to actually for them to have the power in hand of resources as well. Once they have that, it actually becomes about the whole family and not just about them. So yeah, to me, it's a matter of social practice. I wish, we were giving more practice of community building and nurturing relationships to men as well than, what we do for girls. Yeah.
Yeah, because in a lot of countries, and I'm going to be speaking with one particular gentleman in the States, it's really important to educate women, but it's also really important to educate the boys, because then there'd be more of a balance. And what you're talking about is cross-cultural, because I think that women in so many different cultures are what you say, they're just taught to be more responsible, more aware of what's going on. And while men think that a lot of times that there's a pretty equal balance in the home, it's not usually true.
No, but also I think both of them have a thing to share and both of them have a thing to learn. It's an amazing practice that women and girls get to nurture communities and build relationships, right? But at what expense? I think that's the bit we need to take away. And with boys, it's amazing that they have this carefreeness and this boldness and this risk appetite right from young age, where they're going out of their houses, exploring and standing up for themselves. Fantastic. Then again, the question comes, at your carefreeness is at whose expense? So I think there are strengths on both sides and which they need to transfer to each other. And at the same time, they're both paying, or someone else is paying for them. They are being oppressed by the same strengths that they're carrying, and that needs to reduce. So it's not just like tit for tat. It's actually, boys need more warmth and tenderness and practice of, building a community. And girls need more carefreeness, they need that.
So, all right, let's get into specifics. How are each of the languages in the States and India being represented? What I mean is, if the initiative is really, really specific, it's geared toward the same language subtitles, not translations, and not just in Hindi. So it encompasses a whole pool of languages because India is full of languages. How are those languages being checked for accuracy? Is this 100% AI driven, or is there human intervention coupled with AI?
So all of this right now is work in progress. So last 20 years have gone a lot in building ground up evidence, pushing policy work for it, or advocating policymakers to actually make a policy about it, and doing pilot studies or eye tracking studies, again, to test the efficacy of it. It is now that we are on to something big. And what we're doing is like a whole full-fledged plan of systems change. And the systems that we're playing in: systems of policy, system of entertainment, and then system of, let's say, rural society for a young woman or young girls. So these are three systems in which we are playing. And we want to do a needle shift in such a way that, let's say 10 years later, if we don't exist, SLS and its benefits still exist. So the way the whole implementation is right now in our strategy is that there is one technology arm where we have partnered with some amazing technology groups where we are building AI-driven engines for any language in which we want to, do the same language subtitling. So let's say if a state government, most likely education department of that state government, collaborates with us, we will be reaching out to entertainment channels in that state, which is usually loved and preferred by children. We're going to bring them on board. So once these three parties are on board, we figure out which are the languages in which an entertainment content is being consumed. So we do a baseline survey for it and, go to schools and understand from children what they're watching, when are they watching, how much are they watching, which program, which channels. So once we identify the languages, then we would need 2,000 hours of content in that language to train our AI engine so that it can be automated with good accuracy. If all of this is taken care, if we are able to set processes within the state machinery, within 5 years, the cost is going to be like less than $1 for one reader, for a lifelong reading practice for one reader. This means that there is an upfront investment, right? There is an upfront investment in technology. There is an upfront investment in actually doing the subtitling. There is an upfront investment in advocating about it and bringing the partners on board. But once the processes are set and once the SLS has become a regular part of your TV in the households, you are going to be watching it whenever you're going to be getting a reading practice whenever you're turning on the TV. And that's lifelong reading practice.
You're saying that the artificial intelligence is going to be doing a lot of the subtitling or all of the subtitling, but you have experts in each of the languages.
Yes,
and
yes.
How much of it needs to be revised before it goes live? Because I mean, I can put a YouTube video up and I can press automatic subtitles, but if I don't actually read what the AI does, then I don't know if it's really accurate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what you are seeing, I mean, English in some sense, the AI engines for English subtitlings are very sort of highest accuracy because just by the mega reach. But when it comes to Indian languages, especially regional languages beyond Hindi, we hardly have any good AI engines for that. We're literally creating, we'll have to create them from scratch. And of course, there are some tech groups who are already making progress on that front. But let's say one of the states where we recently did surveys, Bihar, there are like 3-4 regional languages. So if you're talking Bhojpuri, if you're talking Maghi, if you're talking Maithili, there are no AI engines for these. So in the beginning, whatever training is happening, it will have many, many manual checks. But that's the reason we need 2,000 hours of content in it to make it accurate with language experts. But once it reaches accuracy level about 95% or 90%, then it's good to go, right? But in the beginning, there are multiple check-ins that you need to do. And even to write the script right properly, the script of that language, you need language experts. So right in the beginning, there is manual intervention.
And as you're talking, Surabhi, I suddenly realized that there's probably a whole other complementary phenomenon that's going to emerge from this initiative.
Oh, yeah.
With children seeing their home language printed on a digital screen that's broadcast to their whole community, they're going to have some more pride in their own language and culture, aren't they? I mean, having their own language, their home language that they don't see in almost any other place, produced publicly is going to have some far-reaching effects on them, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This deep emotional comfort of belongingness. And in fact, one of our partnerships, which is almost finalized with the state here in India, they have 20 plus tribal communities, indigenous communities. And when we met the government staff, they were talking about how young people or the younger generation is completely losing touch from their own mother tongues, like absolutely losing it. There are hardly any reading materials in it. They're not watching entertainment content of it. So how can we bring in language preservation and language pride using same language subtitling? So the partnership that they are entering with us is actually to create stories that children would love, but in same language subtitling of their tribal languages. So it is beautiful. Like, for example, a lot of people, urban people, let's say if I just talk about urban people who are good readers, like fluent readers, and who read a lot of books on a regular basis. A lot of English speaking Indians whose mother tongue is, let's say, Hindi or Bengali or Marathi, because they are not reading a lot of text in it, they actually forget how to write it. They forget the vocabulary in it. They forget punctuation marks in it and its grammar. So when, let's say, a 32-year-old English speaking woman whose native language was Hindi, when she's watching SLS in Hindi because of a Hindi movie, she's actually going to rebuild her vocabulary, I mean, you're absolutely spot on about the pride in your language and reconnecting with your roots.
And what do the studies show about the divergence in age and reading level?
So the reports, which is ASAR, done by a nonprofit called Pratham, its annual status education report. Each year, they do this weak reading status or reading literacy or writing literacy status check for different states at a mass level. And what they have commented on is that in different states, it is common to find a class 5th student is struggling to read class 2 text. But let's say if someone has reached till class 12, in most cases, they are an okay reader. But again, there is a caveat here, right? Like if you're a young girl or if you're a young woman, most likely you would not be reaching class 12. Most likely you would be dropping out at 8th standard or 10th standard. And once that happens, you make another 5 years and you completely lose any kind of reading practice that you were getting.
And Surabhi, do we know if one of the incidental effects of SLS is that girls stay in school longer?
We don't know that yet, Donna. And that is one of the questions that we would like to study once, let's say, a statewide implementation of SLS happens in TV. The other, like, so many exciting questions around it, right? Like one question we do want to study, how do parents engage with children's education once there is SLS in household? Because then they can actually easily, without shaming the kid, understand what is the reading level of the kid just by how they're reading what's on the screen, right? So there are many, many interesting research questions that come out of this. But for this particular one, I don't know. I want to guess that it's going to excite them about them feeling that I know things, like I know the right spelling. I know these many words. And it's a fun and a joyful way of engaging with reading, So
Okay, so it may be simply girls are going to feel more engaged with the written word, and so they may be comfortable staying in the school setting and learning. But there's also a really strong cultural deterrent, and you say that neither of these factors has any established research, so for the moment we can't make any official conclusions. But we can assume, and what you're saying is SLS has an incredible effect on the girls while they are participating in it. So let's just go in a slightly different direction. And can you explain to me the correlation between the butterfly effect and your bird project?
Yeah, I think Brit should be answering this because he's the one who brought this up. But the butterfly effect is, one small tiny ripple somewhere else, somewhere can cause huge, significant mega changes somewhere else, right? And when you're talking about systems change, these are like big, complicated systems of government, big, complicated systems of society. And in some sense, we think SLS is that tiny, tiny leverage in the big system, big, complex system. But it's a strong leverage. It's a fulcrum, right? Like if you make this one change in their everyday life, we think they're going to become better readers. We think they're going to become more confident people. We think it's going to impact their self-worth. We think it's eventually going to help them have better financial status. In all of that, we think there's a lot of benefits that are so invisible when you just look at SLS, but we've seen that in certain cases. So that's the butterfly effect for us. I think SLS is that butterfly effect or can cause that butterfly effect.
And how do you think that it's going to affect on a global level?
Oh, I think, in fact, at the global level, there is already a lot of interest in SLS. A lot of people have picked up, for example, in UK, they are running a campaign, just turn on subtitles, right? It could be a gift from India to the world, such a simple, cost-effective innovation that can work at scale. And not just in so-called third world countries, but everywhere. Anywhere who is interested in learning a new language, anywhere whoever is interested in media accessibility, anywhere people wanting to enrich their vocabulary, SLS would work for them. It's so simple.
All right, so I feel we have a fairly good understanding of the Billion Reader Initiative, Surabhi, and thank you so much. And now, as like a little golden nugget for our listeners, I would love for you to tell us just briefly about another project you've created yourself and that you're now championing, focused on specifically women in rural areas in India in higher education.
And so, I co-lead Billion Readers, and it's a young initiative. My association has been fairly recent. But apart from this, I also dedicate a lot of my energy, time, attention to Saji Sapne, which is a nonprofit that I founded. And the problem that we are addressing is that after 12th standard, in rural areas, there are hardly any real quality professional growth options for rural women, young rural women. So we have designed a rural college model where it's a 1-year-long program. A lot of women from different states come together. They get trained and skilled in areas which are currently considered too advanced for them. Something like coding, project management, math teaching, things where they don't even are allowed to have an entry in, just because of accessibility. So we're working on that, and by the end of 1 year, we focus on confidence, capability, opportunity. By the end of 1 year, most students end up getting a job in reputed organizations and companies, and they're sort of the first one in their entire communities to actually have a stable salary, to actually have a notion of kickstarting your career. So yeah, that's what my nonprofit is up to.
All right, so am I right in saying that the nonprofit you're working on has to do with offering women opportunities to become skilled and certified in different vocations from what's now being offered in local programs?
What I'm saying is that the opportunities that exist for the skilling or the learning opportunities that exist for rural women don't prepare them for the modern world. What I mean by that is, for example, there's a huge trend in rural areas, especially for rural women, to skill them in sewing, embroidery, beautician, like very traditional roles fixated on what women are supposed to do. And I'm okay with those professions, except that the person would be in that profession for 5 years. Her skills are necessarily not taking huge leap. Her salary is not taking huge leap, or her network is not taking a huge leap. So in rural areas, we call it livelihoods, but in urban areas, it becomes career development. So to me, career is not something, it has to be coding. For me, career is anything which has a long-term pathway for growth pathway for you. So it could be, someone wanting to be a beautician and build her career in that. But as long as she has a growth pathway, I would call it a career. So I think there are very, very scarce career options for rural women. There are, of course, livelihood opportunities for rural women. Yeah.
All right. So just to close this up for the time being, what I understand is that you're fighting for women to have a choice, and especially whatever they choose, that it's something that has a continuous learning element attached to it. Now, both of these incredibly ambitious programs are created with a sense of community, and they're based on creating a platform of pride, from what I hear, in a person's identity. So, Surabhi, the big question, what do you wish for in the future?
I mean, I have big wishes for both Billion Readers and Sajhe. I mean, just as a person, as an individual, I just love creating things. And I think my big wish is that the sense of joy that you get from creation can be enjoyed by as many girls and women as possible. Like I just, every single time I see women deeply engrossed in their own process of creation, that's just beauty to me, right? Like that's very individual worldview. For Billion Readers, more strategically, I think for Billion Readers, I really, really wish that the policy that has already been drafted, that by 2025, most in TV channels should have their at least 50% of their content captioned, right? Or accessible. I really want that to be implemented properly. I think once that happens, we are going to be looking at a very different future where audiovisual would mean audiovisual text. So that's my big wish for that. The second, for Sajhe, I want it to become a norm in rural areas for young women to do interesting things once they're done with their school. Like it should be a norm. It shouldn't be a news, like, of course she's going to run this thing. Of course she's going to open this organization. It should become a norm. That's a big wish.
You are creating a revolution in the rural communities in India.
Revolution is a big word, but yes, attempt. I will let my team know that this is exactly what we're doing. We're creating a revolution.
Yeah, I can see you succeeding in this.
Thank you, Donna. I'm loving your confidence in me.
Oh, for goodness sake, all we have to do is look at you, and you're gonna I'll do a short video so people can see how incredible you are, confident, and you're very centered, Surabhi. For someone so young, you've had such education, and what you're doing is sharing your education and your faith in the strength of other people around you, not just women, although you are focused on women, but for everybody, for the faith that we have a stronger population.
I wish you could see my students. I wish you could see the children that we engage with because of Billion Readers. There is no other life that I would choose. I mean, just the joy of seeing them grow and seeing them, you get to learn a lot in the process, right? Like from them. So yeah, it's a team effort. Lots of people are behind happiness. That's all.
No, it's perfect. And what I'd love to do is if you have any links so that our listeners can actually go into YouTube or wherever and see, because I've seen the girls reading on the SLS and it's incredible. Yeah. They're really engaged.
And honestly, Donna, I think children are the best spokesperson for SLS. You have to do zero work. You just show them the screen and they read it, they watch one video, and you're not even telling them that you have to read it. You're just showing them, a video. And then you ask them a series of questions and they list down its benefits like this. Like they are so, the core users of SLS, the people who are going to benefit most from it, are the best spokesperson for it. Like it requires zero persuasion. Sometimes in my interviews with them, I have to push them back that, oh, you're saying good things because I'm standing here. Like, come on, it can't be this good. And they're like, no, they become defenders of SLS. And that is beautiful to watch. I'm going to actually send you a link of that. Like, I love those reactions from kids.
Please.
That's
Because
really
I only
good.
saw one and it was a very formal interview with the founder.
No,
but-
I'm going to send you a series of children's interviews on spot. Like, bunch of them were like informal interviews. And
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait. And we're going to find a way. If you give me permission, we'll share them, but we'll talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then all the other links so that people can come in because you want collaborators and there are people who are going to want to collaborate with you. Surabhi, this has been just a magical conversation. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We want to continue this again in the future. So when more research comes in, we can talk about it for the Billion Readers and for your project.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I love your line of questioning. I think you did a lot of research and homework. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure. So at Doorways to Learning, you've just opened one more door, this time to the lush green mountains of India, where a team of creative and incredibly dedicated educators are helping literally millions of people raise their reading levels so that they can have more choices in life and strengthen their futures and that of their families and friends. You can open more doors to inspirational stories like this one at Doorways to Learning with Donna and find activities that can introduce these stories to your students at scaffoldingmagic.com. In the meantime, have fun in your classes and at home, and see you next week for more.